has to absolutely, positively nail their starting quarterback this offseason. I got one candidate that tops the list, everybody else, and it's the University of Michigan. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. We talk college football year-round here. It is March, the traditional start of our offseason in college football, but this is an offseason unlike any other. Probably going to be the last window for which we have a spring transfer portal, which is going to be April 16th through the 25th, and we'll get to find out once and for all what the rosters are probably going to look like. What the rosters are going to look like. We can remove that probably, strike that, rewrite that, and then we can go into preseason college football. But I was taking a look at this, and in the Big Ten alone, I was just doing the numbers here. 18 teams. There are going to be 13 new starting quarterbacks in that league alone. And of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten last year, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, only one of them will have a returning starting quarterback, and that's going to be Drew Aller. It's really up to Drew Aller how good Penn State is for me, okay? I've yet to see Drew Aller go win Penn State a football game. I've seen Nick Singleton do it. I've seen Katron Allen do it. I've seen Abdul Carter and the defense do it. I have not seen Drew Aller do it, and it's going to be even more difficult unless they can use the spring transfer portal to get that man some wide receivers, because he's losing an All-American tight end, Tyler Warren, who also played a little bit of quarterback, by the way. He's also losing Harrison Wallace and Omari Evans, their 2 top wide receivers. They've got guys like Luke Reynolds expects to be a dude, but I need to see someone else step up. Now, they'll get Kyron Hudson in there, and I think that getting him from USC is a boon. But the last time they got in a big-time transfer, it was Julian Fleming, and that didn't turn out to do much of anything for them. As a matter of fact, going through it, you got to take it all the way back to Parker Washington before you really start talking about a wide receiver that was worth remembering beyond Jahan Dotson in the James Franklin era, which is quite interesting because James Franklin was wide receivers coach in the NFL. Like, that's what his bread and butter was. They just haven't been that great. And frankly, he hasn't wanted to be. He's wanted to run the football. That's how he's wanted to build a football team. Run it, play great defense. He doesn't really want to put it on the quarterback's arm. Even when he had Sean Clifford, he didn't really like doing that. I think if they were able to keep Bo Pribula, they still would have been a running football team. They just would have had more quarterback run associated with what they're doing. That's not to say that Drew Aller won't do that either. But I'm looking at this, and while I think you need to nail, obviously, your starting quarterback if you are Oregon and Ohio State, because you're going with underclassmen in both instances, we think. Dante Moore at Oregon, Julian Sand at Ohio State. And then you go down and you take a look at some of the grad transfer options or transfer options, and I'm thinking about Fernando Mendoza and what he could mean to Indiana. Could he be as good as Curtis Rourke? Sure. Will he be? Don't know. Couldn't tell you, right? Depends on the rest of this. But nobody has shown that they can turn over a roster and make it into a winner overnight, quite like Curt Cignetti did for the Indiana Hoosiers, who were coming off of a banner year, right? Where their only 2 losses were to the teams that played for the national championship. Not too shabby. But then you go down, and you're still getting to an underclassman in Dylan Raiola, who's going to be a returning starting quarterback for Nebraska. You keep going down. You're going to an underclassman in Aiden Hutchinson. Stumped. Aiden, what's your last name, dog? I had it. Childs. My God. Just came out of it. Aiden Childs, Michigan State. Ethan Kaliakmanis at Rutgers. Upperclassmen, but not necessarily the dude you would want, right? You go to Wisconsin, you're going to basically trade a Big Ten quarterback for a Big Ten quarterback, right? You've got, I talked about Maryland getting a new starting quarterback. You've got UCLA. They're going to have what I think is going to be Joey Aguilar and that experience, whatever it's going to be. You got a returner at USC in Jaden Mayaba, upperclassman now, right? I think the breadth of veteran leadership at that position is really what we're talking about, right? Malachi Singleton looks like he's going to be the guy at Purdue. Keep going through this, right? I think, though, if you're looking at the team that has to nail its starting quarterback this year, and I could take this in any direction. I mean, I could take it even to Oklahoma with John Mateer, but I think they did, and that's going to be okay. It's got to be Bryce Underwood at Michigan, because while I think many people expect Mikey Keene to be the guy to get the starts, mostly because that's how Sherrone Moore has liked to run the program. He wants to give the veteran guy the opportunity when all things are equal. The most talented player on Michigan's football team is a true freshman quarterback that they are paying $3 million annually to play at the University of Michigan. Biggest recruit for them since landing J.J. McCarthy, and biggest recruit for their national championship hopes since landing J.J. McCarthy. I think if they're able to get this right, he can make everybody else better. I have my reservations about Michigan's wide receiver core. I have my reservations about Michigan's defensive front. They're losing two great defensive tackles, amazing defensive tackles. I have my reservations about what they got at tight end with Colston Loveland going to the NFL. I don't have many reservations about whether or not Bryce Underwood can spin it and run it. I think with Chip Lindsey calling the plays, you're going to have opportunities. I think you're going to run the football well. I think Chip Lindsey is not talked about in the way that we should as the guy who developed and finished having Drake May go to the NFL as a first-round draft pick. Phil Longo gets a lot of that credit, but Phil Longo lost his job at Wisconsin, and he's down at Sam Houston State calling plays. I tend to think that if Michigan can hit on their quarterback, they go from an 8-win team to a 10-win team overnight, right? The teams that they were closely playing, like Indiana, for instance, maybe they win that game. Maybe they don't lose to Washington. Maybe they still lose to Texas, but it ain't that lopsided. It's easy, right? You get to a place where you're expected to beat Ohio State now because you continue to do it even in what is a rebuilding year, a down year one for Sherrone Moore. And then you knocked off Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, who up until getting to Alabama was still looking for his 13th loss in his head coaching career and has since been welcomed to the toughest league in all of college football. You got a new starter at Iowa that I think is going to be turning a lot of heads. People that weren't paying attention to South Dakota State football are going to find out what Mark Gronowski is all about. But if you are Michigan and you miss on Bryce Underwood, there's Mikey Keene. Is he going to be better than what you had last year than Davis Warren? I damn sure hope so, right? I damn sure hope so. Is he going to be better than what Alex Orji was offering you, who transferred to UNLV? I damn sure hope so. I damn sure hope so. I like to think that Michigan built themselves a much higher floor in 2025 than they had in 2024. That said, I think Bryce Underwood is the difference, not just between 10 wins and 8 wins, but perhaps playing for the Big Ten championship and not. I was going through the list here, and I expect Oregon to be good. I expect Ohio State to be good. I expect Penn State to do what Penn State does, which is win 9-10 games but lose to the teams that we think are good, which means they're going to be ranked inside the top 5 because James Franklin's record against the top 5 is atrocious. You should always pick against him if the team that they're playing is ranked in the top 5. Never mind if Penn State's ranked in the top 5. They're still going to have a hard time beating anybody with a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 next to the name. And I still don't get it, man. I simply don't get it. But after that, it's wide open as far as I'm concerned. I expect Nebraska will be better than they were, but not a whole lot. USC, we'll see, right? Will they be better? Not a whole lot. And then the bottom half of the Big Ten is going to have a hard time punching up unless somebody's able to pull a Kurt Cignetti out of their behind. We would have seen that, though, right? We would have seen that. We saw that last year. I think Rutgers, UCLA, Northwestern, even Northwestern adding Preston Stone, which is a boon for Northwestern, is huge. They're not going to be that good. The only other team I think can make some noise here is Illinois with Luke Altmaier. They won a bunch of games last year. They got under a South Carolina team's skin, beat them. South Carolina team that I thought was better than their record, which was outstanding, by the way, against SEC opponents. So perhaps we see Illinois edge into that top 4 spot, maybe boxing out a place like Indiana because I expect Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State to continue to be who they are. But I wanted to give this just a little bit of air and say Aiden Childs' name one more time because I spent way too much time staring down at this mouse trying to figure out what my guy's name was. That's my bad, dog. Won't happen again. Just throw the ball to Nick. You throw the ball to Nick, I get to say your name more often.